Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing the Jordan 3 Seoul 2.0. Specifically, we're going to be discussing whether you should sell or hold the pairs if you got them from today's shock drop. These shock dropped today, May 17th. They did load 15 minutes early, so it was one of the more boring, quote-unquote, shock drops, but still better than a regular drop. As always, we posted this early info inside of Endurance. Members were prepared, as always. Remember, for early info on Nike sneakers, and even things like Pokemon restocks, like the recent Walmart restock, which we also had a queue bypass for, join Endurance, linked in the description below. There is nobody doing Pokemon and sneakers like we are right now. In order to determine if the Jordan 3 Seoul 2.0 will be a fruitful hold, we will cover the current average price, since they already dropped, and I'm making this video after the fact, unlike usual where I give my prediction, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding, not the retail to resale initial margin, rather the ROI. Basically, are these going to be worth your time even if they do go up in value? As of me making this video, it is May 17th, the day of the shock drop. The average post-shock drop price for size 8 to 12 is currently $266. Currently, these prices make these profitable if you have no tax or if you could avoid seller fees. It's only about lunch money, nothing crazy, but profitable nonetheless. With a retail of $200, they are selling for quite above that, so you're able to make some easy money, just nothing crazy. About 36,000 pairs dropped on Nike Sneakers US alone, which is not that high of a number, but it's not low either. It pretty much falls right in line with Nike's recent patterns of slashing stock, even on high demand colorways, in order to improve long-term demand. For comparison, the Jordan 12 Flu Game, a big general release classic colorway, had 32,000 pairs released on Nike US, not including the restock, which had a couple thousand too. Now, the Jordan 3 Seoul is also a big deal. Maybe not as popular as a classic like the Flu Games, but it certainly has very high demand and is historically important. Pre-sale was around $300 before the drop, when people didn't know there would be a Nike sneakers release, which explains why these were overvalued and why they dropped in price rather than increase post-sneakers drop like we usually see. A lot of people like this shoe, but the stock isn't exceptionally low, so nothing out of the ordinary here. Now, let's discuss what price will look like once shipments go out in the 2 to 3 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will now be in circulation. Normally, we see about a 10% decrease in value on general releases, and I still think that's going to be close to the case on these, even though they already dropped a ton in value post-drop. You might be thinking they already dropped $40 overnight, no way they could drop more. Unfortunately, I think they can. Remember, these were overvalued because people did not expect a Nike sneakers release. Now they're fairly priced, so we should expect still the usual drop as pairs enter circulation as usual, which should be in the 5 to 10% range. Let's say 7%, since it isn't a normal general release and the majority of stock is coming from Nike sneakers, which does have fast shipments, allowing many people to list these immediately. This would hypothetically leave the average at about $247 on average, and potentially a little bit lower than that. The bigger sizes should hold up better for sure, and that's why I suggested sticking to sizes 11 and up on these. But now that the average price range at those points in time are evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase or even continue decreasing following these shipments. Looking at two high-demand classic Jordan 3 colorways, the black cement and the white cement 3s, we see the black cements depreciated and are very low currently, while the white cements actually appreciated. Both of these had much higher stock than the Seoul 2.0s, but they also had higher demand. I'd lean more towards these appreciating like the white cements did, just because of how much lower the stock is, while demand doesn't seem to be proportionally lower. Just look at this current sale volume within the last hour at around $260 to $270. Now, finally, the hold margin on these. Basically, even if they do go up in value, are these going to be worth your time or not? If these increase like the white cements did hypothetically, which I think is very possible, let's say hypothetically they get to $300 within 1 year, that could allow for a 20% ROI from their lowest point, which is pretty decent, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing too out of the ordinary. I don't think the OG Jordan 3 Seoul is relevant, by the way. I know a lot of you guys might bring that up. These had much higher stock than those, obviously, but it still is a historically important colorway, and that does add to its long-term value. So while initially maybe we only see an increase to 300, Perhaps they'll continue beyond that, it's possible, but with 36,000 pairs on Nike US alone, I'm really not expecting anything too crazy. Hence, I'd rate these barely above average at 5.5 out of 10. I would not recommend investing in additional pairs in the secondary market, but they should still appreciate nonetheless. I just think there's a lot of opportunities for your capital. Remember, it's not about how great or hyped or historically important a sneaker is. It's about how good of an ROI opportunity there is. And remember, for early info for shock drops just like this, and even the best Pokemon information and monitors, make sure you join Endurance with the link in the description below. If you haven't started Pokemon reselling already, make sure you get into it. There's a ton of money to be made. Other than that, have a great rest of your day.